if I have 3 seconds to explain to somebody what my company does, what am I starting with? Because it may not be what your homepage starts with. It might not be like your general pitch. You know, we were at Adobe Summit a few weeks ago. We integrate with a lot of different technologies, but obviously just about every person at Adobe Summit is really invested in Adobe products. So we start with how we work with Adobe clients, how we integrate with their products. And so we spend a decent amount of time like putting together high-level talking points for the team on site just so they know what 3 things to start with, like what should resonate most.
Totally. I mean, we talk a lot about the concept of elevator pitches, but like a conference pitch is sometimes like that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like a Zoom where you sit down, you do a full first demo call with a prospect, and you get to tell the whole story. It's a very different environment sometimes. So thrilled to have you with us today, Amy.
So excited to be here. Very honored.
I can say I've definitely known you now for 8 years.
Wow.
And the reason I know that is because I went and looked up our first ever email.
I love it.
In 2017. And I was like scrolling through my inbox and I was like, oh my God, I've emailed you so much over the years.
Mine is probably like equal.
I know, but I just felt so, honestly, like genuinely so touched that you've been such a friend and supporter of Workbench and that I've been able to email you from like big questions to little questions, everything around marketing over the years. You've been such a force here in the New York City marketing ecosystem, from Conductor to Splash That to AlphaSense, Spring Health, a Workbench portfolio company, and now CMO at CHEQ. And so I just want to say again, so proud of you and so grateful to you, really, for all that you've been to Workbench and also New York City at large.
It's exciting to see you guys grow too. Like some of your investments really taking off from the very early days. It's been really exciting. It's been a great partnership.
I know. So it feels longer actually than 8.
It does,
like, is
actually.
It only 7?
It actually does.
So I'm so pumped to have you with us at the drafting table. So we'd love to dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I kick off every pod with this question, which is, what do you think is the number one thing founders should know how to do before they start a company?
Sure. So I think, obviously, I think about it a bit through the marketing and go-to-market lens. And I think when you're really small to when you're really big company, you still have some of the same challenges, which is you're never going to be able to do everything, especially in marketing. And you're always going to see some competitor or some other company doing something really cool that you wish you thought of and want to try to build to. And you're never going to be able to do it all. I think it's really important that you pick your bets and make really educated bets and do those things really well, especially in the early days. You cannot do absolutely everything. Decide the 2 or 3 things that you're going to do those exceptionally well, become known for those, and then add more as you're able to scale it, right? But I think you can do a lot of things just okay. It never has the desired effect. If you do a few things really well, it usually has a great return for you.
And this is so acute in marketing, right? I think of all functions because there's so many channels now. I mean, there's always been a lot of channels, but a lot of stuff you can do online, in person, every possible social platform, right? I mean, depending on your business. And so, you know, one of the things you and I talked about was just, of course, with the rise of AI, it is easier than ever, of course, to do content. And so now there's a lot of content out there. Some of it good, some of it maybe, you know, less good. So there's a lot of noise. And so the question is like, how do you cut through noise? One of the specific examples that I've seen or trends I've seen with my companies and founders at the earliest of stages is people reverting back to in-person events.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And saying, hey, to get away from the noise, people are actually really looking to get together with their peers and hear what they're doing, hear their pain points, hear how they're solving it. And so we've been talking a lot about like dinners again, right? And conferences. So that's where I'd love to nerd out with you today, especially because you sent me an incredible 37-slide deck that it sounds like you put together for your team on how to prepare for conference at UO.
They do a lot of it. But yeah, we have a framework to prep for conferences. And we just came off the heels of our biggest conference of the year, which is Adobe Summit. So
it was amazing. I mean, when I say like this deck, I mean, we should figure out how to like share parts of it.
We can anonymize it.
Because it was unreal. And I've always known how much, to your point, like you prepare for things, but like I was like, this is another level. Like every founder needs to see like this type of prep work goes into making a conference really, really really powerful. So, I mean, I'd love to just hear a little bit, like, how did you even get to this place? Have all your prep docs for conferences always been 37 slides?
No.
And how some of the learnings over the years?
It's funny. They have not always been 37 slides. And to be fair, that's our biggest event of the year. We invest a lot of time and resources into it. And so that deck especially, is a pretty big one. We also have a lot of ancillary activations around it. But like, even for a smaller event or an event where we're maybe just sending a few people and doing a speaking engagement or a dinner or something like that, it's probably still at least like 12 to 15 slides. And the purpose is really to let those traveling to the event know what's ahead, everything they need to know about the audience, what messages we think are going to resonate, who's going to be there, to like what to wear, like how formal the setting is. Some conferences are super casual. Going to a Gartner conference in 2 months, it is super buttoned up. And so some of what we did for Adobe isn't appropriate there. But it's really meant to set the right expectations for the team, pre-event, at the event, and post-event. And we try to include everything that they need to know, so we take the guesswork out of it. And we also try to set expectations for what they should be doing on site, too. I think one of the biggest challenges with conferences is sometimes folks just show up to see what happens, right?
I mean, you and I talked about this, like, hey, I'm all about people trying stuff, right?
Yep.
But like, again, like, you're not probably going to get the most value.
Right. You need to think about, like, it starts with the selection of a conference, right? Like, why that one in particular? Yeah. Especially as an early stage founder, you could spend every day at a conference or event. You could fill your days with 3 events in a day.
Yeah.
And you could sponsor, dozens of them that look great for your business, but you're going to have to place bets on them, and you need to figure out which ones you're going to go to. And then once you kind of figure that out, it's all about like understanding the audience, why you're there, what you want to get out of it, and then kind of working backwards from those goals and figuring out how do we best engage on site together.
So even starting there, selecting a conference. I mean, I think it's such a good, like, there are huge conferences like Vegas. I mean, you could just, again, spend all your time in Vegas, right? And
everyone wants to do that.
Exactly. And then there's much smaller ones. There's much more niche ones, like much more regional ones. Yeah. So do you have a best practice? Do you feel like you should do a mix of them? Do you feel like if you're an early stage founder with very limited resources, these big conferences actually cost a lot of money. Yeah. So do you have any hacks and tricks around getting in for free, getting in for cheap, and how to think about that?
It's interesting, right? I always say, and it is so true with conferences, especially with the ticket prices of conferences, you get what you pay for, right? Those conferences that are giving away the free tickets to you as a CEO founder, a CEO founder of an early stage company, right? Or to your sales team or something like that. Like, generally, they're giving away lots of free tickets. And you need to think about, is your audience a group of people that don't even want to pay for a ticket to something?
Right. Are they going to be there?
And so oftentimes, like, the ones that are the mega conferences that have $50 Expo Hall Pass badges, or giving away a ton of free ones, generally they scare me because they're usually not the best place to spend time. It's not always true. Sometimes you could hit a lot of press at those things. Sometimes you could hit different groups of buyers and stuff. But like, usually those mega ones that are giving away the tickets aren't where you're going to find the best density of your buyers, right?
Okay.
I do think, like, you have to start with, like, what are your goals? Who are you trying to get meetings with that you just haven't been able to get meetings with? Is it prospects? Is it partners? Is there a speaker that you on an agenda that you just know, like, should see your product? This should really resonate. You haven't been able to get in with them, or maybe you had a few good conversations. Those conversations dropped off, but taking a really close look at what the conference is offering, who's there, and then figuring out like why that one makes sense is really important. We do, even early days, I've done a match to like a target account list. And so sometimes, especially if you're going to buy or considering buying a sponsorship, they'll share last year's they'll share last year's list, at least titles and companies that attended. And you can kind of match that to your target account list and say, like, does this have enough density of those accounts that I care about there.
Yeah, yeah. I also sometimes have said to our companies, like, you can also just ask your prospects, right? Like,
yes.
Are you going to be at this conference, right?
When I started a new company, and if I'm not familiar with the market, and the sales team or CS team doesn't really know either, I just ask them to ask on their calls, hey, do you have any events you're going to coming up? Like, which ones are they? Which ones do you really love? And just start building a database that way. It's 100% true.
Yeah.
If your prospects and customers are there, there's a real good chance, like, the profile is really similar to them.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, being careful, because there are times when the company that you're targeting might be there, but it might be their sales and marketing people.
Correct.
Right. They are themselves trying to sell something else. So the company might be there, but maybe the actual persona or user is not there.
Right. You want to make sure your actual attendee is there. And a lot of times too, like, they show up as speakers at the events. Those speakers attract like profiles that want to see them. And so even if you're not getting access to the list or last year's list, looking at the speaker list and also looking at the other sponsors that are there will give you a good clue of, is your persona there too?
Yeah. One of the fun, I guess, hacks that one of my companies shared with me is they target much smaller municipalities and so forth, and selling kind of almost into government. Mm-hmm. But with a lot of government employees, they actually have to do continuing education. And so continuing education is a recurring, conference that happens pretty regionally for people in order to, like, doing their continuing ed. And they've done really well there. And those are not, I would not say Vegas level conferences, right? But in some ways, it's almost sometimes more intimate. Right. So again, like finding the venue or finding the avenue, right?
100%. Sometimes those smaller regional things can be just absolute powerhouses, especially if you, like, there's a high density of accounts that you care about in a, like, second or third tier market. Find the events there. Yeah. And those can be really affordable to sponsor. A lot of times you can get a speaking engagement as part of those. They can be great. Yeah, those can be great.
Yeah, yeah. Thoughts on attending, having a booth, or sponsoring, right? And again, we can like talk about the pros and cons for, let's assume like you're very early stage and you don't really maybe have a ton of budget. I mean, sponsorships can some of these can be so expensive.
I think so first of all, you should always at least, if you're really interested in the conference, you should always at least engage with the sponsorship team there, because they'll share their sponsorship kit, which will have like more in-depth audience profiles and things than like just what's published on the attendee-facing website.
Oh, that's a good tip.
You should always at least try to get the sponsorship kit. The other thing is, sometimes if you're going to send 2 or 3 people from your company and the tickets are $2,000 each, $2,500 each, $3,000 each, sometimes the lowest tier sponsorship is cheaper than you buying individual tickets. So, if you can get a sponsorship for $10,000 or $15,000 and it includes 4 tickets, do that if you were going to buy 4 tickets anyway, right? So I always try to...
I love that.
Like, compare, because sometimes you end up spending so much money on tickets, you could have just had even the small pod in the back, and that gives you more access to the attendee list and things like that. Yeah. And then sometimes it makes sense to just buy the tickets, right? Like, sometimes the sponsorship costs are exorbitant, or there's none left that are really interesting and worth the price. And sometimes it just makes sense to buy the ticket. If you're buying the ticket only, though, you still have to do the pre-event work, right? Yeah. And that pre-event work, I think, is as soon as that attendee app opens up, going through it, like signing up for it day one, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, doing outreach, setting meetings, letting people know that you're going to be there. And as those attendee apps launch, they kind of launch with the initial list of registrants that have opted in. As the conference gets closer, they get populated with more and more attendees as, all the attendees kind of start to prepare for their trip. Keep checking the app. Yeah. And it is such a valuable tool that I think is underutilized. Like, so many folks just, will download it on their phone the day that they're showing up at the conference or midway through. And that's fine if you are just an attendee there to learn and you have your sessions picked ahead of time. If you are going there to make business contacts, to try to get appointments, like, do not do that. Yeah. As soon as the attendee app launches, you're in it.
I love that. Yeah. And I want to go into, like, again, the prep of, like, contacting attendees and all of that. For a lot of our early stage founders, the reality is like even attending some of these conferences is cost prohibitive, and or like they're experimenting and saying, hey, look, I don't know if we even need to attend, but maybe we show up to be around the conference, right? Some of like the guerrilla tricks is like being around the conference, hosting, like grabbing coffee like nearby the conference center,
100%. So some of the stuff that I love, see what partners and friendlies are going to be at the conference too. If you pool your budgets together, your small budgets together, you can do a really killer event. If every 5 different partners are putting in $2,500 a piece, you can have a great cocktail party or really special dinner. Or if they're putting in $5,000 a piece, you can do some really nice stuff with just getting a few friendlies that are targeting the same profiles. The other things that I love doing, I recently saw this. A company was running just free shuttles to and from the airport, like really nice luxury transportation, Suburbans and some limos and stuff. And they were just pre-booking, like you're going to arrive at the airport and you're going to need a ride to your hotel. How about we just pre-arrange that for you? And it's like a branded experience. Sometimes they're putting a rep in those cars. That would turn me off. I would be like, no, when I land, I don't want to have a meeting with you.
I don't want to be having a conversation right now.
But I feel like when I land, if you've done that for me and it's really nice and I don't have to think about my transportation, I'll probably take a meeting with you later.
Yes.
Putting the rep there seems overly aggressive. The other thing that I love that we did at Adobe Summit, and I've seen others doing, is everybody hates conference food, especially by the second and third day. If you are smart about getting some reservations at nice restaurants around the conference at the exact time slots that lunch is scheduled for on the agenda, it's pretty easy to book lunch meetings if you're really respectful of their schedule, right? Like, hey, there's an hour and a half for lunch this day. I've got a reservation here. I'd love to have lunch with you.
That.
You have to eat anyway.
Yes. And
you don't want the conference food. And we've been really successful there, and I've seen a lot of other companies be really successful there. Nobody wants to sit in that awkward space with the terrible food for another day.
And it's, again, like, how do you make it as not low lift, right? But
easy for them.
Easy for them, right?
Don't interrupt the rest of their conference schedule. Make it super close, super easy, but something hard to say no to.
Totally. And let's get into the knowing who the attendees are, because that's the whole point. When you're in a conference, the whole point is like go and meet people and build the relationships that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do on Zoom, right? And so, yes, a lot of times at these conferences now they have these apps and you can see everyone who attends. What if you were not able to get an attendee list? Does that happen?
It happens. There's always ways to try to compile some of them, right? And sometimes even if you don't know if a ticket is worth it, if that ticket comes with access to the attendee app, that is worth it. A lot of times that alone can be worth it. If you're starting with a sponsorship team, even if you're deciding not to sponsor, they will usually share previous year's attendee list, at least titles and companies. That's a great place to start with who is going to be there this year, even if you don't have this year's list and don't have access to the app. You can also, it still works to search the conference hashtag on LinkedIn, especially days before. People will start
Such a good
sharing
pro tip. Yes.
That they're going. You won't compile the entire list, but you'll certainly start to pick up a decent amount of attendees. You should be going through the speaker list like a fine-tooth comb. Those are attendees too. They have 1 or 2 speaking sessions while they're there and they're attending the rest of the time. A lot of times their teams will come. So there's ways to kind of back into likely who's going to be there. But I would also say, if you're not going to get access to the attendee list and you really don't have a good sense of showing up, that's probably a good signal. You probably shouldn't be prioritizing that conference, or you shouldn't be investing too much there. Maybe you're sending one person for the team to really scope it out and see if you want to do something bigger next year. But I wouldn't invest a ton of time or money there if I don't have a good sense of who's there.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I've heard is we know it's definitely the right ICP, but I just don't know if my specific prospect is going to, I don't know if Sam, who's a CIO, is going to be there, right? And something I've heard some of our companies do is they'll even just ask and be like, Sam, by the way, are you going? He might just be like, no. But it's a great opening to be like,
100%, right? If you already have a meeting set up with a person, just ask if they're going to be there, or send an email and just say, hey, some of our team is going to be at the conference, thinking of being at the conference, will you be there? You can always say some of our team's going to be there, and if he says yes, show up, and if not,
Yeah.
then you don't need to go either, right?
That's also true. Yeah, exactly.
I'll buy a ticket if I know my 3 top prospects are there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to buy a ticket if I
it's
don't.
like a good, early testing, right? To be like, is this worth it, right?
Yeah, hey, we're going to be there. Oh, nope.
No,
one got back
maybe
to us and said they were going to. Well, I'm not going either.
Because we're not going. Yeah, absolutely. And so asking your prospects, right, if they'll be there. Yeah. Let's say you do get attendee lists, and it does have names and some type of contact info, right? Like, what is the message you have your team send?
So, great question, right? Because you're doing this, and other savvy vendors are doing it. Not everybody's doing it, which is shocking, but other savvy vendors are doing it, right? So folks are getting a decent amount of outreach usually. I like to have some offer that we're driving to, like, hey, we're having a cocktail reception on this evening, like next to the conference center, whatever. It can be a small thing, but I like to have some, like, something to offer them, right? Without just saying like, hey, I'm going to be there, you're going to be there, take a meeting with me. You may have never heard of my company.
It's just so hard.
And I'm sure you want another meeting. Like,
exactly.
But I try to have something to offer, or, like, hey, we have a little reception this night. Hey, I've got a really great lunch reservation this day during this time slot. Would love to invite you and your team to be there. Hey, saw you're doing XYZ speaking session. I can't wait to see that session. I'll be in the audience, really looking forward to it. Like, I think you want to try to have some genuine interactions, but like give them something of value too. Even if it is just showing up for their speaking session, everybody wants attendees at their session and wants a full room. So it's nice for them to know that like people are coming to it. But I try not to start with overly aggressive like sales outreach, right? It's just such a turnoff. And then also if you do run into them on site, sometimes the person, they're like, oh God, I don't want to run into them. They've emailed me 15 times asking for a meeting. But a lot of times too, if you reach out with an offer for lunch or a cocktail party, even if they can't come and they run into you on site, they're usually so thankful. Oh, thanks so much for thinking of me. I'm so sorry I couldn't make your thing.
Yeah.
But they're usually appreciative that you thought of them.
Yeah, exactly. And you've at least put your name on the radar, right? Okay, so a nice note ahead of time, just offering something that could be fun and could be helpful for them, right? Yep. Then a huge amount of what, looks like your master deck said is really about like prepping the team.
Yes.
Right? Because I think the reality is that if you are going to these conferences, like these are big conferences with a lot of other vendors and booths and just like seas of people.
Even if they're not big, even if it's a 100-person local event.
Yeah.
You should know like why you're there and what the expectation is, right?
Exactly.
And so maybe we're not preparing a 30-slide deck. We're preparing a handful of slides.
Yeah. How much are you guys thinking about like prepping the team on positioning and messaging and having like the talking points? Because sometimes at the conferences you do not have time for long conversations, right?
Well, I think that's why prepping the talking points really, really matters, right? Yeah. Because your product might have a lot of different features and benefits, and so many different ways that can work with XYZ persona. But you have to kind of back into, why are they at that conference? What are the key themes of that conference? What is the focus of that conference? That's likely why those people are there. And you have to back into like, what are the messages that resonate most? It doesn't mean your other messages don't resonate. Yeah. But if I have 3 seconds to explain to somebody what my company does, what am I starting with? Because it may not be what your homepage starts with. It might not be like your general pitch. If we were at Adobe Summit a few weeks ago. We integrate with a lot of different technologies, but obviously just about every person at Adobe Summit is really invested in Adobe products. So we start with how we work with Adobe clients, how we integrate with their products. And so we spend a decent amount of time like putting together high-level talking points for the team on site just so they know what 3 things to start with or where, like what should resonate most.
Totally. I mean, we talk a lot about the concept of elevator pitches, but like a conference pitch is sometimes like that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like a Zoom where you sit down and you do a full first demo call with a prospect and you get to tell the whole story. It's a very different environment sometimes.
Yeah. What's crazy is too, like, so when I started at CHEQ, we had done some conferences, but we had never demoed our product at the conference. We kind of always set up a table and maybe had some collateral and would talk about what the platform did. But I think we never showed up at like big industry events. But also I think we were like a little nervous to like just demo on the fly without knowing what the person would want to do.
Yeah.
Some of these conferences, they're technical in the weeds people, and they don't want you to tell them what it does. They just want you to show them in a few steps. And so you also have to, if you are exhibiting there, sometimes they're like demo heavy conferences, sometimes they're not. But if it's a group of individuals that you think are going to want to see the technology, you also have to think about like, what things do I want on the screen that are going to entice them to come over and say, oh, I see that. That's really interesting, right? And then like, what are the few things that you're going to show on the platform? They're not going to do a 30-minute demo with you at your booth. You're going to have like 3 to 5 seconds, maybe a minute to get them hooked where they will ask deeper questions. And so if you're demoing there, also spend the time to figure out like, what am I showing first? What's going to entice them? And then what are the 3 things I want to make sure they see so they ask for a follow-up meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's such a good reminder about demos. And again, a very different type of demo environment than most people are used to.
Yeah. Usually you have some background. Why did they take the call? There's been some discovery that happened first. I mean, at Adobe Summit, we demo, even last year was our first year there. I think that in total, over 3 days, I think that we had about 60 or 70 demos.
Wow.
And it's just kind of nonstop. They want to see how your product integrates with Adobe. Nonstop. And, you know, it can be a giant retailer, a huge bank, some big B2B SaaS company, a company in Japan. Like, you don't know who's going to walk up to your booth, but you kind of have to have the basic scenarios that you're going to go to, like, figured out.
Totally. Yeah, because it could be so many different types of personas.
Right.
Some of them could be in your ICP, and some of them might not be.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes they're not, and sometimes they're, like, adjacent, right? Like, you know, at Adobe Summit, we'll get the web analytics people, we'll get the MarTech people, sometimes we'll get, like, the commerce team. They're all similar roles, but there's a different flavor of what they want to see and what they expect from your platform.
Yeah. And I know, you know, you do a lot of work with your team in terms of saying, hey, get all the qualifiers, right? Yep. So can you talk a little bit about that, how you think about that?
Yeah. So if you are doing a booth at conferences, the data collection becomes incredibly important. Also, if you're not doing a booth, the data collection becomes important too, right? Like, if you show up at that conference and it's a whirlwind of 3 days, and you sit down at the end of the 3 days to take notes on like what happened at the conference and who you met, you will forget everything, right? Like you'll forget what happened on the first day. So actually, like no matter what, if you're either if you have a booth there or you have or you're just showing up, like you need to figure out what the data collection is and set expectations with your team for how often they're taking notes, the detail level of those notes, et cetera. But if you're doing a sponsorship and there's a lead scanner included, I think what a lot of teams miss is oftentimes they're customizable, the questions, and a lot of times you may not even know, like as a founder or company leader, how customizable those scanners are, and your event person might just be like, oh, we just go with standard set, I never customize them. But it's really important, if it's a really busy conference, you want the things that you care about, just easy checkboxes, right? Like, so for us, if it's a conference we're demoing a lot at, did they have a demo on site? Which of our products with a drop-down were they interested in? Did they specifically ask for a trial after the event? Because oftentimes, if they're really interested during the demo, we say, hey, we can give you a 2-week trial, a 3-month trial, whatever. And we want to hook them there and get them to commit there so that when we follow up, they know exactly why we're reaching out and they're interested. And so we try to put whatever qualifiers are high up in the scanner, so it makes it easy for our team, busy or not, to just say like, boom, yes, boom, they had a demo. No, they didn't. They actually didn't ask for, you know, a trial. They just came by to get the swag. That's okay too. It's a great list building still.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that we like customize that and really then know how to follow up. That what that translates to is when you get back to the office and your team is following up, how do I prioritize all of those folks that I just met? It's funny, Adobe Summit was a month ago. We just set a meeting with a huge company today who said, like, we still continue the outreach to folks that came by for weeks out, right? A huge prospect, a huge company, responded today and said, you don't know how many follow-up emails I've gotten. And I responded to yours because it was really personalized, because our team took really detailed notes on site. And she's like, oh, you guys actually remember my conversation.
That's
it's because
amazing.
Whoever scanned the badge took the time to say, she came by, she was interested in these specific things. And even, 4 weeks post-event, she was like, oh, thank gosh. They remember my conversation.
I love that story. Well, it's just such a good It's such a good reminder that like these details and the time they spend with you matter.
If you think about it, like I don't want to have the same conversation with you like 10 different times just because your team on site doesn't remember what we talked about. Then I have to have the same conversation with a BDR, then a sales person. I don't want to have the same conversation 10 different times.
Exactly. Okay, that's such a great, again, pro tip on really personalizing the data you're collecting.
Yeah, I will also say, so sponsorship or not, one of the things we also do, especially with the big sponsorships, is we start every morning with a staff meeting. That way we make sure people are out of bed and that they're ready for the day and that we, know where everybody is and don't have surprises later in the day. But the other thing we do during that meeting is we go through the list that we scanned the day before and we make sure everybody has notes. And we say, and we also, in the scanner, we actually also put who did you speak to? So they know like, oh, did Amy have that conversation? Did Jess have that conversation? Who can I talk to if I want more information? But then we'll go through that list in like 10 minutes and just say like, hey, who spoke to this company? It's not filled in. What was that conversation? And we'll try to add notes for them on site. I think that translates if you're not doing a sponsorship too. Like have a team meeting, the 3 or 4 of you that are there at the end of the day or beginning of the next. Who did you talk to? Who did you talk to? Who's still on your list that you didn't get to? If you're doing that throughout the conference, you'll come out of it way further ahead because you'll know how to follow up with folks and you'll also have better success there, right? Like you can coordinate what do you still have left to accomplish.
Of course, it's always better to do at least the next day because then when you fly out of Vegas, you're really
right. I don't remember anything. My mind is blank, and I'm like, I just want to sleep.
Exactly. Yeah. I know another thing. I mean, I've seen some of the conference prep that some of our other companies have done too, and it's like these. Like honestly stunning Notion docs, right? Where it is like hour by hour, the meetings you're going to take, because so many of the meetings also happen outside the sessions, of course, and outside the booths, right? So curious if you have any pro tips on that, like with your execs, where it's like trying to get the one-on-one time, maybe with a really key customer. Maybe it's someone you already have closed, right? But even getting that customer time, if someone who's like an active customer of yours, makes a ton of difference.
Right. Well, and I think you have to set the expectation both with your executives and with the on-site team, right? It's so easy for folks to travel to an event, have something happen that they need to tend to back at the office and then spend all day in the conference or in their hotel room on doing work and never actually getting down to the conference. And so we try to set dedicated times for our executives, like that they know they're going to be needed or that the team is going to set appointments for them in. And so our CEO came to Adobe Summit and, obviously he doesn't have 12 hours a day for us to just randomly book meetings with him throughout the day. But we wanted folks to know like, hey, from this time to this time on Tuesday, he's got like 3 or 4 slots that he could do coffees, meet and greets. He could be at the booth, but those times you can safely communicate. On this day, this is his availability. We also try to schedule our staff ahead of time. So, if we're doing a cocktail party the second night of the conference, we may not decide everybody on our team that's going to go to it yet. We often do that based on like, are there accounts there or not? But we will decide what execs are going to be there. If they want to see our CEO or meet with our COO or our head of sales, like that person is going to be at this event of ours, they'll be in this session, whatever. That way we're able to tell folks like how they can connect. Yeah. And that we set the expectation with our team too. You can do your work in your hotel room, right? But you're here for this conference and we expect you at least available during these times.
Yeah. Again, I just think that FaceTime, is so important. I know one of our early stage companies also was at a big conference and they really were able to find, and actually they had their team wearing their swag. So we have a whole session. We should have a swag like soon. But one of their prospects saw like the t-shirt and was like, emailed the founder, said, oh, I saw one of your teammates here. Are you here? Would love to get breakfast, right? And again, I just think that FaceTime is what makes conferences so unique rather than another Zoom because they've been trying to get, time with this prospect for a long, long time.
Right.
And sometimes it's at these conferences, like might only be the few chances you get to do so.
Well, a lot of times too, for these like bigger annual events that folks go to year after year that have a pretty good reputation and often aren't giving out the free tickets, sometimes that's their buying event for the year, right? Like they're like, I'm going to walk through this expo hall and I will decide my vendors for the next year. Or this is the place that I meet with vendors. I don't have time to meet with them all day, every day throughout the year. So I know when I'm at this conference, that's what I prioritize here. And so sometimes, like, a lot of companies go intending for certain ones to be their buying events of the year. And you want to be available for them to make those connections, right? Your window might close for another year if you're not available.
Totally.
I love your point about the branded T-shirts too, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something that you can do whether you're officially sponsoring or you're just attending. We do it with all of our official sponsorships. We do it when we just send folks to events. We have these black check bomber jackets that say CHEQ in bright pink.
Amazing.
All the way across the back. I think the team wanted to kill me when I first introduced them, but I was like, people need to know you're there. And it was so funny. I think we rolled them out at Adobe last year. The first morning, the first day of the conference, our chief customer officer was wearing it at breakfast. And his client from Adobe or from Toyota ran over and was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you guys were here." And he had breakfast with one of our biggest clients from Toyota, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And it's such an easy way for folks that want to connect with you to be able to find you and to know that you're there, right? Like, even if they don't want to connect with you, if they see 4 or 5 folks, a dozen folks wearing your branding around the entire week, they start to become familiar with you.
I totally agree. And I mean, I just think it's so fun, like this twist you put on it, right? Like, I think that's like the fun part of conferences. And I've seen we should talk about like the creative stuff you've seen, right? You could just go for, a t-shirt, which is great too. But like it sounds like you really put thought into it, and like the branding's so cohesive, right?
I think it's so easy to blend in at a conference.
The question is, how do you stand out?
You don't want to. Everything looks the same, it feels like. And everybody has the same notebooks and pens and, business casual attire. And you want to do things to stand out. Like, if you're going to spend the time and the money to be there, no matter how much money it could be a little or a lot. If you're investing your time and any amount of money, make it worth your while and go all in with it. Otherwise, don't do it, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's like almost sending it back signals. Be like, we're here. Otherwise, like, how will people find you?
Right. And honestly, like, nobody wants to engage with, like, the 10th vendor that looks exactly the same, sounds exactly the same. Like, they're at the conference because they want some human connection and experiences, and, like, make it worth their while to engage with you.
Yeah. Well, on this note of swag, I mean, I think this is where we can have a little fun. But like, what is some good swag you've done, you've seen, that you think is really creative?
So there's so many great ideas, right? And then there's like the things that everybody does. I do think if everybody is traveling to an event, you have to think about what is realistic for them to bring back, right? Like, I've seen companies like try to give away these big package drones and things, and then like people can't bring those back on a plane easily.
Exactly.
Or you get involved with like, oh, I can help ship that back, but then you're like have 50 things that you have to ship to them after the event, whatever. So you have to think like, what are they realistically going to carry back? In my experience, everyone loves things for their kids because they're taking days or a week to be apart from their family, and their kids love like them coming back with some little gifts and stuff. So we do a lot of like plushies. Also relates to the company. We do a lot of little bot plushies and things because it relates back to us. We do a lot of plushies. We do a lot of stickers, which are really cheap. People love stickers, and they'll give the stickers to their kids. And then I sometimes useful things, right? I know a lot of companies are doing socks, but like nice branded socks, people still use and wear, and sometimes forget even at a conference. They're like, thanks. Yeah. I needed this. I think no matter what you're doing, just think about like, why would the person want to hang on to this? Is this like, are they going to get 20 other notebooks that look exactly the same? Are they going to bring it back to their kid? At Adobe, I saw somebody doing dog toys, not for everybody, but for the dog owners. Every dog owner picked up like the different toys. And I was like, that's such a great idea, right? Like do something that's at least a little bit different and unique, that's either aligned to your brand or is useful to them, or is at least easy for them to bring back. Yeah.
I'll give a shout out here to one of our Workbench portfolio companies, ShiftRx. They're in the pharmacy staffing space, but they went to a conference earlier this year, and they, their whole kind of mantra or mission is to help staffing and make pharmacies less of a zoo. Mm-hmm. And so they actually found like a local animal shelter. And brought these like
People love that. I've
animals
seen it.
there, and then people were donated to the animal shelter.
I saw people love this, right? Like I think,
and this was like a baby alligator. This wasn't just like a dog.
Incredible.
It was like a little like kangaroo. I was like, how did you get a
it's so funny. I feel like a lot of the conferences will allow it for like 1 or 2 days. The conference organizer usually isn't the one like, coordinating with the rescues and things, but they'll like allow like one booth to do it each afternoon or whatever. I recently saw at another conference this vendor, content syndication vendor, their CEO is just known for like loving dog rescue, right? And like just being a huge dog lover. All their swag is always their rescue animals and things. And it's very genuine,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
They were doing, one afternoon they did puppies at their booth, but they also were doing a $5 donation to a rescue for a booth scan.
Yes.
And so people didn't even want a pen or whatever. They were like, "Oh, you're going to donate $5 in my if you scan, okay, fine, you can scan my badge, right?"
Yes.
And it's so genuine because everybody knows that
Totally.
that company is so aligned.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes like something like that where you giving back and people feel like they're doing a little bit of good will get you.
I know. Our other portfolio company, Cockroach Labs, they go to very technical conferences to developers, and for every badge scan, they donated to Girls Who Code,
which
right?
is awesome.
Which is, I think,
I'm like, no, I don't want you to scan my badge for like that pen, whatever. But like, it's hard to pass that up if they're like, we're gonna give $5 or $10 if you let us scan your.
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah. So I feel like stuff like that, if it's very authentic,
it has to be authentic.
Can really go a long way.
I agree.
So yeah, I just think it's like figuring out what is really true to you and your company, your mission, and also for the users. You know what I mean? Like all of that together.
I think, and whatever it is, right? Like all of these stories, I think it needs to be unique, right?
Yeah.
And memorable.
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend a lot. You should spend time thinking about what is going to make it unique and memorable and what's right for that audience and connected to your brand. But it doesn't have to be expensive. Even if it's $2 a booth scan and it's really connected to your mission, great, right? Like it doesn't have to be expensive to stand out.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about after the conference, because this is like you come back from Vegas, you're pretty tired, but like the work is not over.
No.
The work is not over. And so it sounds like you actually probably, I'm sure, do a lot of the follow-up prep even as much as possible, right?
I mean, we're doing it throughout the conference. We're like, standardizing the data to make sure that we can upload it to HubSpot really quickly post-event. A lot of times you are, especially if you're a sponsor of the event and you're coming with like a great list of leads, you are up against every other vendor that is also uploading leads into the database.
These follow-ups.
And oftentimes it's like the first 1 or 2 vendors that get out with their outreach are the ones that are going to get meetings, and the rest of you get forgotten because by the time it's the 15th, 16th email I'm getting, I'm just kind of ignoring it. And so it's really important to us that we try to be really quick with like processing the list, getting it in the hands of the team really quickly after the event. Oftentimes if, it's a week-long conference in Vegas and we're flying back on Thursday, no one's at their desk on Friday. Monday morning means a lot.
Yeah.
But for my team, it's really important. We process that list as quick as possible. It is all hands on deck to make sure it's uploaded and routed correctly so people can do the follow-up. Pre-event, we book, depending on kind of how big the conference is, anybody that was at the conference or is following up on the leads, we book like an hour to 3 hours for the 3 or 4 meetings post-event that are just that conference, your follow-up block, right? And we pre-book it so they don't come back and just stack their calendar with all the other things they missed. Totally. They have to come back and do the follow-up.
It's like minor stuff like that, right? Because I think people just move on to the next thing, right? So it's like time.
And I do think you have this early wave, like that you want to try to get out there first with really compelling and relevant messaging. And then you also have this wave after all of that, all that outreach is done, where a lot of vendors say, I sent my 3 touches, they didn't respond, move on to the next thing. You should still do another touch or 2, like a month or 2 later. Sometimes we just go to these conferences and we're so busy there. We come back.
We're slammed catching
up. Good
Yeah.
intentions. We're slammed coming back. Yeah. And sometimes it takes a month or 2 to say, I did really want to see that thing.
I totally agree.
And if you're not like landing in their inbox with like a genuine touch point a little bit after the event, a month or 2 after, you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah. I think that's like the art of the follow-up, right? It's like almost like you do want it to be soon.
Yeah.
But maybe like not too soon or like or just
either
like,
early or after.
yeah. And to not assume everyone does their follow-up maybe just all in the one day, right? And finding the
other
rhythm.
thing that sometimes is effective is pre-booking that next step on site. Sometimes it's hard to coordinate calendars and stuff, and I don't love it when our team is on their phone at a booth or whatever, but also if there's a really great prospect that just took a demo, is really interested, says that they want to do a deeper one with their team, ask them if you can get on the calendar now. Even if it is 2 months out, say, you know what? I know we're going to be really busy when we come back, and there's going to be tons of people reaching out. Can we just schedule a date now? And even if you have to move it, at least it's on the calendar.
Exactly. I love that.
It is so great when you can
get
get sometimes they're like, no, just follow up with me. But if you can pre-book it, even if it moves 3 times, at least it's set.
Yes.
And it's a great reminder to them.
Yeah. And so is the general CTA after a conference, generally, I'd love to get on a call and just chat more.
It depends, right? I think no matter why you're showing up at a conference, there are so many other benefits to be had, right? And that's where capturing notes on every conversation is really important, right? If it's a hot prospect, then oftentimes, yes, it is a call, a deeper discovery with their team. Maybe you met with the leader and they want to make sure that the team under them sees it, whatever. And so it's whatever you kind of agreed to during those conversations. If it was just a booth scan, then maybe it's setting the first initial kind of conversation. But also sometimes it's a partnership opportunity or a press opportunity, or a lot of analysts will come by and see what's exhibiting at a conference and take an initial demo and then say, oh, I think this might fit into some report that I'm doing, and expect some other follow-up. And so a lot of times it's some kind of a call, but this is where notes come in. It's really important to figure out, if you've had a conversation, what did you agree to the next step being? Maybe it's not a call with them, it's a call with their team. And your email is, hey, we had a great conversation on site. I know you're going to connect me with this person, and this person. Could we do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And, even for a lot of founders I talk to, it's, look, maybe they're not going to be buying your software in the next quarter or even the next quarters. But, if they've indicated some interest, right, how do we put them in some sort of a nurture type of touch point to say, okay, well, maybe they don't want to get on call right now. Maybe stuff is totally slammed, but maybe we can send you a white paper in a quarter from now or some sort of benchmark report. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I'd love to keep up with what your business is doing. Great. Ask if you can subscribe them to a newsletter. Ask if you can send, product release communications. And if so, indicate that in the notes too. Those notes should live in your CRM. Yeah. And you should know the history of those initial conversations over time. Yeah. I think the other thing too that I've seen done well is when you can really coalesce your whole company around it. Yes. And so it's not just the 4 reps who are going, but it's hey, when people are on calls with prospects or even customers, hey, are you going to this conference this year, right? Letting them know, tying all the things from a comms perspective, right, to that if it's relevant.
Especially for the bigger events, almost everybody at your company should know that you're doing it and how they can help. For your regional events, at least everybody in that region should know that you're doing it and how they can help.
Catch us at the event on social, right?
Make sure you're bringing it up on your calls. Make sure they know that they can set time with so-and-so and so-and-so. Yeah. Some of those teams, aren't going to go, and they should still be helping with pre-event outreach. Your BDR team should always be helping with pre-event outreach, whether or not they're going. And they should always be ready and have their calendars blocked to do the follow-up with you. Yeah. And it is about, making sure that you communicate with that broader team what the expectations are for them. Also, a lot of times pre-event with us, it's making sure that product is ready for heavy demo days. Yes. And if some feature is supposed to be ready for us to bring out at the conference, that they are on schedule to deliver it and they know exactly how we're planning to demo it. Early in my career, I've had you try to sign into the product and the conference IP, the conference IP address is hitting the product too many times and you end up getting blocked or something. Totally. Demo. So make sure your product team knows, hey, from these hours to these hours, we could be really busy. Will the product be ready? Yeah. Who do I call if something does break? But it is making sure that everybody kind of knows how they play a part in it, right? The worst thing in the world is for you to plan to demo all day and there just be some outage that you could have prevented, or, for you to show up and you had a great reception lined up for the second night and no one did any outreach and you have no attendees for it. So
totally. I think it really is all hands on deck, but also everyone understanding the value of what a conference is,
100%.
right? It's not just like a hang in Vegas, right?
I mean, it's so funny because when we figure out like the lists of who goes to events, we're really intentional about who goes.
Yeah.
We want some customer facing people to go, some sales folks to go, some execs to go. We're really intentional. Our SE team a lot of times to go if there's a lot of demos. We're intentional about who we send, right? And people get really excited that they get picked, especially if it's the first time they're doing one of these big events with us. And I'm always like, be careful what you wish for. These are exhausting days. You are on all day.
Truly on.
And also, I want you at the social events. If we're spending the money to send you there, I want you on all day and I want you at all of the social things, right? And so it's so funny because people get so excited that they've been selected to go or feel left out if they don't. And then most of the time they come back or like the second day, they're like, I'm so tired. I can't do this. And I'm like, these aren't a vacation.
No,
they're not. If you're doing them right, they're not a vacation.
They're definitely not. Yeah. And that's why, again, the deck that I saw, it's just such a reminder of like, the marketing leader and team in so many ways is the conductor pulling in everyone, and like it's truly like a symphony to like put on. It's like a Broadway show almost, right?
Yeah. It's a lot,
everyone
right?
has their cues, right? And you were like, this is a floor map, this is the traffic. I mean, I was so impressed. Truly.
I mean, it is people experiencing your brand in person, right? And you have to think a lot about like, what do I want them to walk away with?
Yeah.
I want them to walk away knowing that we're like a friendly, very customer-focused organization. We've got a great product. Everybody is here to help. I don't want them to walk away thinking that like we're boring, don't want to engage with them at all, like that we're like everything else out there. But you have to think about, how do I communicate my brand in person?
Totally. And what that experience is like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you were to fast forward through this episode, what do you think is the one punchy takeaway? We've had a lot.
It's a great question. I think that the biggest thing is be honest with yourself and your team about what you can do and what you can do well, right? And be honest about the commitment it takes to get a return from some of these, from any event, right? And if you can't commit to doing it, it's okay, right? Make some bets on the big ones that you want to do and you need to be at. Make sure you do those well. And don't worry about the ones you can't do, right?
I mean, the thing I would say that I really was a takeaway, because everyone thinks about being there. And if the conference is Wednesday to Friday, they think about, but it's really the time before and it's really the time after.
Yeah.
And not even just the week after. To your point, maybe it's like the months after a conference is still a lot of value.
It's the buffer. It's the
value you can still kind of squeeze from the juice.
If you're doing it, especially if it's a big one, right? And it's a big industry event, and you're going to interact with a lot of people, like you're pretty busy the 2 weeks before, at least with the outreach, and you're pretty busy the 2 weeks after. And then you're also extending, some of the outreach pre and post event beyond that. But those 2 weeks before and after are really critical.
Yeah. And do you find that, again, I feel like marketing goes through so many cycles, but your thoughts on like in person and like the value of in person right now?
I think in person, I do think that, especially in the increasingly AI-driven world, and where folks are focused so much on productivity and scale and interacting with their computers and machines more and more than ever before. I think those in-person experiences, like people crave, right? Like they're doing them to get out and have organic, authentic conversations with real people that they just can't do in the office or behind their computer. I think you can accelerate so many conversations and deals and so much if you're showing up at the right things and showing up well at the right things. It can be such a amplifier and accelerator for your business.
I know. And I was reminding some of our companies this as well, is that because so many teams now actually are distributed, especially larger enterprises, sometimes these conferences are only times your customers even see each other.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes they're sending some of these bigger events that they're really invested in. Sometimes they're sending 20 people. They're sending their entire like whatever team
Yeah.
that's the time
That's
they
their
see
offsite,
each other,
right?
like,
Exactly.
each year,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
exactly right. And so it oftentimes is a great place to hit the whole team, the whole buying committee.
Because otherwise, I mean, so many of our companies, they want to go in person maybe to a customer on site or prospect on site, but no one's there.
Right.
Or like one person there.
Right.
And
Exactly.
their colleagues are in Denver and Dallas and so forth. So yeah, again, like the value of conferences when done correctly. I just...
Yeah, I
and
think
this
that's
is-
the thing is when done correctly, right? And be honest about what you can put into it.
This has been such a masterclass. I literally have written down so many of these pro
Happy to
tips.
help.
It's so incredible. Who do you think we should interview next?
Great question. There are a few folks.
Yeah.
I always love Maria Pergolino. Do you know her?
No.
She has been a phenomenal CMO. I can introduce you. She is right now doing some consulting, but she took Anaplan public. She was the first demand gen marketer.
Oh my gosh,
at
amazing.
Marketo.
Oh my
Then
gosh.
she went to Aptus. She took Anaplan public. Then she was at Active Campaign. She's done a few different models from like self-serve to enterprise. She's awesome.
Amazing. Okay, I would love to connect.
Yeah.
And how can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot-ish, I guess. I don't know. I'm one of those marketers that is more behind the scenes, I feel like, and very focused internally and not out at every single
Well,
thing.
we're making you
but
out
LinkedIn
here.
is the best place.
Well, we're making you out here with this pod. So thank you so much for being with us at the drafting table. This is so fun.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. So fun.